and gentlemen, but I'm now going to mute you all. I love you all, but I'm going to mute you all, and that includes even the candidates. But be patient for me, with me, because it would be lovely to be able to hear the candidates for this session. You'd be surprised how much better this might go. So I'm going to individually unmute candidates. In fact, I'm going to welcome some of you today already. So I'd like to welcome, except that I'm not quite sure. There we go. I'd like to welcome Sam. Sam Parason, it's lovely to have you here. I've unmuted you, and hopefully you'll be able to see me as well, which is lovely. Okay. No, maybe not so good.
Yeah, I can see it.
And I'm unmuting Simone number 2, I believe it is, and that's Simone Zmood. And Ethan, Ethan, you're there, and it's lovely to see you. And I think we're missing one, and I'm just going to see where you are, because I was expecting to see. Actually, I didn't know if I saw Nellie. You may not be actually under. I'm not quite sure. So, Nellie, if you've come in, I hope you have. If you haven't, so if you have, I'm going to scroll through. You may have come in as Emmy Monash. No, I don't think so. NCJW has not appeared. I'm going to just scroll and wave furiously if Nellie, if you are here. Otherwise, we're going to start without you. In fact, I'll speak on your behalf. It may be horrible, though. But I'm just going to scroll through. I can see lots of Emmy Monash. It's lovely to see all of you guys today. I can't see Nellie for the time being. So if you don't mind, we're going to make a good start in the absence of Nellie. And if she comes in, I'm sure I'll see it come on. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's Thursday Lunch Club. Ethan, Thursday Lunch Club, a fireside chat with Ronnie Figdor. A little problem though, Ethan, it's neither lunch nor is it Thursday, and there's no fire here. So is this the sort of truth or expectation we get from politicians that none of it is true, Ethan? What do you reckon?
I was waiting for the meal.
You're waiting for the meal. Fair enough. Hopefully the stuff you're going to hear today is in fact true, and even though it's not a Thursday or a lunch, and there's no fireside chat, hopefully the rest of it will be true to form. Tomorrow, by the way, this is going to be tame. Lovely to see you all, but you really have to come in again at about the same time tomorrow to see a bit of sparring. I think this is going to be very laid back today, but welcome to you all. The Thursday Lunch Club, by the way, I won't do a big promo now. At the end, I'll speak about it, but it's a weekly thing. And normally, by the way, it is on a Thursday, not on a Wednesday. It's just we had a lot to get through this week, and we're going to do it over 2 sessions. But otherwise, it's a weekly thing, and I'll share with you some of the events coming up later on. It's Mental Health Week this week. I don't know if you know, Mental Health Week in Victoria. And I'm guessing all of you are coming on today as a result of looking for some mental stimulation. I also wish to welcome the aged care homes. We have, I think, a couple of Emmy Monash levels on today. We often have Sheridan Hall and also Our Care, and they're probably on, and I can't see everyone at the moment, but welcome to you all. Just to clarify, and I'm sure the candidates will correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that for the Camden ward, and I'm only focusing on the Camden ward today and tomorrow, the Camden ward has 13 candidates, of which will be asked to choose one, but of course 3 will be elected. The top 3 polling will be elected. In relation to preferences, it may be a little different than state or federal level, in as much as I don't think there's, and as I said, the candidates will correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no automatic preferences, although Simone and Ethan and Sam and Nellie, if she comes on, will have sent out a flyer. It might look something like this. I can't say that I actually have your flyers, because otherwise I'd be promoting one of you in particular. And of course, by the way, because I love one of you in particular, I can tell you now, I will be putting one of you, or at least one of the 13 candidates, as my first preference. And I think I've summarised the way it works, so you now know that there'll be three of the candidates will be elected to the position. And someone's asked about what is the Camden area. I might leave that for the time being because we're going to kick into this. Past experience in communal affairs. Sam, any past experience?
Probably a little bit, yes.
Someone's phone's ringing.
Do you want me to tell you what?
Yes, sure.
As a child, I was in Beitar.
You don't have to apologise.
I don't apologise. I'm very proud of it. I became Rosh Hashanah of Beitar, Australia.
Yes.
We might have crossed our paths at some stage.
Mm-hmm.
I was school captain at Elwood High School. After being a captain in year 11, I met my wife Ruth, who is my backbone and my big supporter. And I got a place on record that I wouldn't be able to do any of the things that I've been doing all my life without her unwavering support. From Beitar, I ended up being on the Executive State Zionist Council and JCCV. I then continued all my involvement with Maccabi and been involved with that for well over 45 years, 50 years probably now as a competitor, administrator, president, vice president, treasurer. I've been on the board of Australia Maccabi. I'm now presently a life governor of Maccabi Australia. I'm a life member of both Victoria Maccabi, Australia Maccabi. I'm a Hall of Famer in the inaugural Hall of Fame that was started in the year 2000.
Sam, I'll remind you, you're limited to 2 hours.
Okay, I think I'll get bored stiff. About 20 years ago, I was approached to start up a Bendigo Community Bank, which we now are very proud of and runs really well in 193 Balaclava Road. So if anybody wants a good service bank that knows you as an individual and by name, please try it out. And the good thing about our branch is that you can nominate your charity or your organisation. And if you take out loans, the part of the monies that we receive, we give back to that organisation. We've given over $2 million to the local community. Yep. And we've got more to give.
All true. I might move on though, because I want to ask Simone, community experience.
So I'll acknowledge Sam has a few more years on me, so he's got a lot more that he's made of his time under his belt. Yep. I think my community involvement started at a very young age. I was the social officer for Monges on my campus. That's how I met my husband. So I was fortunate to meet him young and find my partner in life and my soulmate, who's been the wind beneath my wings, and likewise, we're a great partnership. Beyond that, I became very involved, I guess, in both social causes and environmental causes. So I became involved with SIDS and Kids and helped them start their Treasured Babies program to support families whose babies had died either as a miscarriage or a stillbirth. Those babies are so little and none of the clothes that you could buy to clothe them were actually big enough. So it's a great program now. It provides little coffins and tiny little clothes that people can actually dress their babies and properly say goodbye. So that was about 10 years involvement with SIDS and Kids and parent support for people who really have been through what we wouldn't wish on anyone, losing a child. I spent 6 years on the Board of Environment Victoria, so a lot of experience both through my management consulting and board roles in terms of governance, strategy and finance. Yep. And sort of more recently, I seem to be taking on treasurer roles for different not-for-profits. So currently the Mathematics Education Research Group of Australasia. Simply because I have, as I said, really good analytical skills, really good skills at looking at strategy and how do we decide what we're actually going to do with the money that we have. And then in the Jewish community, it's been more just family-oriented things, going down, to seek care, delivering food, looking after people. So a mix of sort of really grassroots community work and also work that's very much more at the kind of strategic and national level.
Got it.
Ronnie?
Got it. Thank you. Ethan, Young man, I can't say your age, but I guess you're somewhere between 17 and 19, not inclusive. Is that approximately right?
Approximately.
Approximately, but I would never disclose your age
Of course.
publicly. Ethan, a young man, community experience?
Well, look, as Simone recognised, Sam had more than her. Those two might have a little bit more than me, just a bit. But at the same time, I'm on the management committee of Reason Australia, so I've had about a year's worth of board experience already. And I'm a strong campaigner for causes that I'm really passionate about. Since I was 16, I was handing out how to vote cards at elections. I'm a youth ambassador for the Mental Health Foundation, so I'm really passionate about good mental health policy on all levels of government. What else? I'm a volunteer at Flying Fox, so hopefully this year I'll be going on their camp. Yeah, I think for me it's I've always been a strong advocate and campaigner for certain causes. I have been going to protests since I was a kid, and so I think part of my experience is a deep understanding of policy and of government. But yes, it might not be as
pick up on that right now. And by the way, I welcome some of the other candidates who are watching in the background, and they'll be on tomorrow. But Ethan, if I may, so a little bit of experience when you understand policy, but aren't some of these issues really adult issues, like long-standing issues that come from a wealth of wisdom and background?
Well, I am still an adult.
Yes.
That is why I'm running. That's why I'm allowed to run. But I think, again, we have decisions being made. Firstly, not only for adults, there are people below the age of 20 that these decisions still affect. Yep. And more specifically, those people will age. I'm sorry to let everybody know, but we're all going to get old. And because of that, we're directly impacted by the decisions that are made on every level of government. And so the fact that we don't have a seat at the table, Glenara has a youth advisory committee. They run arts and music events. It's not actually any sort of advice going on there. And again, we have a very quickly changing environment, and we're not including young people in those discussions.
Ethan, I hear that. Yeah, sorry.
No, go on.
Yeah, I hear that. I just wonder about the phrase that says that our future is defined in part by our past. Do you have the past to help us formulate the future?
Again, I would be one out of, as you said, 1 out of 3 elected, and then within that I would be 1 out of 9. I'm not saying that every single councillor should be young. That would make no sense. I'm saying that council works as a team. Council is expected to work collaboratively, and because of that, it's really important to have councillors from very different backgrounds and from very different experiences. Having experience as a whole is all well and good, but if everybody has the same experiences or is the same person, you have one set of voices that's there, and you're not just representing one group of people.
Right. And you mentioned reason. So perhaps there's a great opportunity to ask 3 candidates. I apologise on Nellie's behalf. I'm not sure what's happened, but I asked the 3 candidates. Any party affiliations?
No, definitely not. From me.
So Ethan, you haven't responded other than you said reason.
Yep. So I am an endorsed candidate for Reason. I am a member of Reason, so I felt that it would be irresponsible and not transparent for me to run for election without being endorsed by the party. There are often a lot of candidates who will run as independents when actually they're members of political parties. I've always felt frustrated by that. It's always been my political home. At the same time, I think for a lot of people, the fear is that if you're a member of a political party, you can't accurately represent your community. Reason has very much left local policies and the local decision-making up to its candidates. So I'm not being told.
So Ethan, I'll pick up on that shortly. I just want to pick up on something you said before, and you said it's good that people disclose party affiliations if they're members of party and so on. And I just asked everyone if they're a member of if they've got party affiliations, and yes, Simone?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I agree with Ethan on that, it's important for people to be transparent. I am not a member of a political party. I have never been a member of a political party. And quite honestly, I think my grandfather would roll over in his grave if I did become a member of a political party.
Yeah.
So in honour of him, I would only ever become a member of a political party if I actually supported all their policies. And I don't think such a party exists in Australia. So I stand for residents.
That's fair enough. But Sam, aren't you a member of the Liberal Party?
I'm not a member of any party, never have been and won't be.
So not a paid up member of any political party?
Never been, never have been. Where did you get that idea from?
I'm just making that up, just off the cuff. Just double checking. So, Ethan, do you get some financial support from Reason?
They paid directly for certain things. We still haven't spent as much money as other candidates have. I only got 10,000 flyers. I only got 20 core flutes. Like, you know, a lot of people see party endorsement and they go, wow, you've got a party machine behind you. If the Labor and Liberal parties are fighter jets, we're like a steamboat. And, you know, other than that, I fundraised like everybody else had to do.
Brilliant. And so, Ethan, some nominal financial support, but of course the issues are local. Do you have to repay the allegiance back to Reason?
Do you mean, do I have to repay the funds?
Well, some sort of allegiance. Do you have to support a particular party line as a result of the fact that they've assisted nominally in your campaign?
I support the party line whether they were going to assist me or not. Because as I said, I'm a member. I've chosen to commit myself to this party. I'm a member of the board. So I'm actually making the decisions for what the party stands for anyway. I wouldn't have joined if I didn't support its policies. So I think a lot of people seem to think that, you know, everything in politics is you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and that people don't actually do things because they believe in them, which is very sad.
Okay. Sam and Simone, definitely no party affiliations. What's the role you think that state or federal parties should play in local politics?
Simone
Sam,
first.
I'm happy to go first. Look,
Okay.
I think we have to recognise that there are 3-level governments, and there is some overlap in terms of the interactions of what they do. So local council historically has been about the 3 R's, the roads, the rates, the rubbish. But there are a lot of extra things that council does now that would be beyond that. Glen Eira Council has less services than some other councils like Geelong, but we still do a lot of things such as our services for seniors, such as our maternal child and health centres that are far and beyond, you know, those 3 R's.
Yeah.
But I think what's really, really important is that local council is the closest to the residents, and it's very much about how we live, that why we've chosen to live in this area, how we're connected to the area, and very involved with planning particularly. And certainly a lot of residents have called me about the planning issues and development and their concerns. And that's where I think there is a bit of tension between local government and state in terms of the direction that state might want to go versus where we as a community in Camden actually want to go.
So Simone, I'll stop you there because I want to hear from Sam on the issue of state politics or state and federal parties being involved in local politics. But otherwise, I do want to pick up on development shortly, development planning. Sam?
So what I'd like to say is this. First of all, council should be totally non-political. I believe that there's too much politics in council. I'm being endorsed by the Ratepayers Association, and we don't believe in any politics whatsoever in council. I think it's important that all councillors can work together as a team, because that's the only way we're going to get things happening that would please the majority of people. And I think the next step is state government and federal government. Now, if you don't have relationships with state government and federal government, you're then in a position where you're acting on your own. Now, a lot of the laws that the council has to endorse or follow come from state government. So I would like to think that we could make it a priority to work with all sides of the federal and state governments to see that we can achieve things that are in our interests as a local community, that we can get some funding from the federal and the state governments to endorse some of those plans that we would like to endorse. So you do have to, and I have done this over the years with a lot of my communal work with state and federal government to enable us to achieve some sort of grants and some sort of policies that will help our local community.
Right. So Sam and Simone, then I put it to you that Ethan has a heads up, because in fact he's part of a state party, and he could well have connections at a state level, the sort of connections that you spoke about, Sam.
As I said, I do have relationships with party members from both sides of politics that I've developed over the years, and I would like to use those to the benefit of our local council and our community if I am fortunate enough to be elected.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to add to what Sam said. I don't think you need to be a member of a political party to actually have interactions and relationships with different people, both in government and in opposition, and the parties that surround that. I think we've got to be very clear about the fact that relationships can be built, and often are historically built, throughout our lives anyway. Okay.
Fair enough. Let's pick up now on Simone. You kicked off. Actually, no, before we get on to development, I have to deal with the hot button issue. If I ask people to send me questions, 95% of the questions came up saying, ask about the Inkerman bike path. Now, I can see you all looked surprised that came up. Let me just clarify, by the way, if as a voter, I must admit it would have been far more convenient for me to have a comparison table saying, here are the hot button issues and this is what each person holds and so on. So I could look up LGBTQ, and in fact, by the way, I did. I can see there is a website that actually discusses where each person holds, and in the case of Sam, they were a bit ambivalent. They didn't know what you held, but otherwise it'd be great to have a chart. Unfortunately, that's not possible. So just quick hands up. Are you in favour of an Inkerman Street bike path? Hands up. One. We've got one. Okay. So that, at least we've covered that issue off. Ethan, you're quite keen. Obviously, two out of three are not. Why are you keen? I've got to unmute you again. Yes, sure. Actually, I was wondering why you're so quiet lately.
Sorry. Look, I think a lot of people hear, that I support the bike path and go, I support everything to do with it. I definitely have concerns. I absolutely have concerns. I've spoken to Simone about this on length. I think for me, all the research shows that active transport is the future and has to be the future. There are just far too many benefits to ignore. Everything from the physical and mental health effects, the actual support that it gives to small businesses. It's massive. Lowering our collective carbon footprint. But again, at the same time, I think residents' concerns about parking are perfectly legitimate, and I would like to see council work in a more collaborative way to get those people on board. I think we've also discussed ideas such as, a trial bike path, like what they've done in Elizabeth Street in the city of Yarra, where they just put the bike path in, and then together with residents, they found they're working on a more perfect solution. And so I don't think, people definitely see it as a binary, that you're either for it or against it. But I think there's a little bit more grey in between that black and white.
Right, got it. Okay. So it still needs a bit more development, because you're quite right. I think there are some issues in relation to parking. I've certainly received quite a few questions in relation to how many units there are either on Inkerman or on the streets off Inkerman. Each is allocated a car space, but of course with couples they may have, so it definitely requires more thinking. Okay, fair enough.
But I think we can do it in a way that brings everybody on board.
Okay.
And if I
yes.
might say so too, Ronnie, and Ethan too, I think it's very important to think about small business in the area as well. Now, if you cut away a lot of their car parking, what happens to the small business?
But Sam, the research shows...
No, it doesn't. If you actually dig deeper into the research, what it shows is that overall the shopping strips do better, but certain businesses do not survive. You really need to look at the data rather than saying property values are going to go up and businesses are going to do better. The data is actually more complex and nuanced. And the problem from the cycling lobby is that they come out with black and white statements about how things benefit people. So,
no, again,
I would disagree with you.
You're right that there is more complexity to it, but I think, again, just as much as the cycling lobby argue that everybody will be benefit from it, those opposed to it will say all small businesses are going to collapse as a result of this. When, in fact, as you said, data shows that in some areas they succeed and in some areas they struggle. Again, because of that, we need to ensure that it's thoroughly developed and worked with the community, and that's not just residents, but that's businesses that are in the area as well. But to say that putting a bike path is definitely going to destroy all local small businesses, I think is definitely a stretch.
Right. It's not, and I know that one of the other candidates asked me about how many businesses there are on Inkerman. There are some, obviously. It's not a big shopping strip, but I think it's certainly going to affect the residents on and adjacent to Inkerman Street. So I agree with Ethan. It'll require a lot more work. Yes, Simone?
Yeah, I just want to expand on that. So I'm actually for safer cycling, despite the way some people jump into that, as Ethan said, binary for or against. But I think the processes that council uses are incredibly important. And the process that council used for this were very much about working towards an outcome that they wanted, very divisive, very traumatic for a lot of people living on Inkerman and some of the side streets, and really not listening to residents, manipulating data to show outcomes that they wanted. I went through that in quite a bit of detail since data analysis is one of my specialties, and also their priorities. So I will say, I think their priority for Inkerman was actually plainly wrong. If we want to improve congestion, then during peak hour, the first thing we do is look at our schools and reduce the need for parents to be driving their big cars, dropping students off. There are no schools on Inkerman Road. There is a kindergarten. So in fact, if you actually look at their cycling plan, only 3 of the streets actually go past schools that they've identified for this highest quality, safest cycling. And then on top of that, some of the things that they are then pursuing is, as well as removing parking, making it more difficult for emergency vehicles to actually get to properties, they're also starting to talk about blocking off all the side streets. So they're obstructing connectivity. It would mean instead of picking my parents up to go to an appointment, I would literally have to drive around the block, and yet they're only 5 houses away.
Okay, so, Simone, I may stop you there because I think I've got your view now. I had no idea you were passionate about this one.
No.
So I will move on because...
Can I just say too, Ronnie, that, I've got kids and grandkids that cycle as well, and I'm all for cycling, but I'm also more for listening to the community to make sure that the community is heard and their beliefs and the people that are the most affected are listened to.
Yeah. Now, I will move on to something else, though, and that is, I think on all of your pamphlets, probably about 13 pamphlets were referred to the words overdevelopment and planning. I don't know how I'm going to decide between all the candidates, so Ethan is going to have a quick look to double check whether he's got it there. But otherwise, Ethan, in your case, I think it's referred to incentive...
Sustainable, appropriate, and consultative.
Yeah.
Consultative.
I would like to pick up, I must admit, I don't know how to decide between the candidates on development and planning because everyone seems to have an issue. But Simone, what is overdevelopment? What does that mean?
It's a bit like beauty, Rabbi Victor. It's in the eye of the beholder.
I don't have. Go on.
So when you ask, and I know when past councils were asked what appropriate development was, they said something that abides by the planning guidelines. Mm-hmm. However, I think when you speak to residents, particularly those who've got, proposals for 7 stories, 10 stories, 40 stories going, they have a very different view. And their view about what appropriate development is something that preserves the amenity of the neighbourhood, looks after the residents, doesn't change the character. And I'd like to really, because I want to give everyone else a chance to speak, to point out, Bayside has managed to get structure plans, which is the formal document that creates things at 4 and 5 levels. For some reason, across the road into Penn Highway, we've got proposals going up 10, 12 levels. So I think what it means for residents of Glen Eira is that real concern about whether our council has actually been listening to the way that residents want to live and then representing that in a clear and strong way to state government so that state government supports the neighbourhood that we have, the reasons why we've lived here. If I'd wanted to live in high rises, you know, where all the buildings were 10, 20 stories, I would have lived in the city.
Okay, Simone, stop you there. Hang on a moment. You're my candidate. Could you tell me what's the correct number of levels, please? Sorry, could I be heard? Am I on?
Who are you asking?
Simone, yeah. So you're my candidate. What's the correct number of levels,
Look,
please?
To me, it's something so fundamental. It's actually about going back to residents and actually doing a proper referendum, not these little surveys they do that are completely biased samples. Different people I've spoken to have said that next to them, if they're in 2-story, they probably like 3, so it gets stepped up. And maybe along Glen Huntly Road or Caulfield Junction or Caulfield South, that it's really more 6 levels, not 14. So you can still actually have higher density.
And Ethan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Ethan, what's overdevelopment?
Again,
Can I be heard?
I think you're going to hear a very similar thing from most people. As Simone said, it's development that doesn't fit the character, and it doesn't fit residents' expectations of things. For me, I think part of the really big problem is that a lot of these decisions happen behind closed doors. There really isn't enough transparency surrounding it. Part of my plan for development includes the creation of a developer and councillor communication register. So any communication that happens between a developer and a councillor is put down on a public register, so that it's seen what they discussed, what came out of that discussion. It's actually happened in a local council in Western Australia and works fantastically. So again, it's just ways that we can bring those discussions out into the open.
Great.
Because
okay, got it. And
there's
Sam?
no reason for them to... No, go on.
Sam, similar response?
Yeah, similar response, but I'd just like to add, when we moved to Camden 42 years ago, we had an architect, and the first thing that he taught me, and it stuck with me for the rest of my life, is that you build a house that fits the neighbourhood. And I think a lot of that has gone out of action and doesn't exist anymore. So we need to take into account the residents' view. We need to take in the character of the neighbourhood. We need to really work on that, and we must listen to the actual residents.
Okay, I've got it. So I think I'm getting a similar response from 3 of you. So development planning is clearly an issue, but I don't think it would be a decisive issue between these 3 candidates. Fair enough. Melbourne, I guess the candidates are all familiar with Melbourne 2030, the planning for sustainable growth, which is a Victorian state long-term planning. I know the state government requires that 70% of development takes place in established areas. I note, by the way, that our council, Glen Eira, has been quite particular in relation to car spots. I noticed that our neighbouring councils possibly fewer. So Port Phillip and Stonington actually require fewer car spaces for residential apartments than do Glen Eira. I put to you that it's great that everyone's agitated about development, planning, but isn't that a state issue? What are my councillors doing for me on this one? Anyone?
Sam, did you want to go first?
Lady first.
I'll speak then.
Yeah, look, car parking, how much of the land is covered by a building, all of those things go into what are called structure plans or are design frameworks within the council. And the difficulty that we've seen, particularly over the last 5 years, that's been very contested, is that a lot of things may either get rejected by council or appealed by residents, and then they go to VCAT. And VCAT generally upholds the developer's position. And part of the issue for Glen Eira is that our actual plans are very weak. So compared to other councils that had them in place 10, 15 years ago, we're actually just doing them now. So we don't have many protections. And I would add, in terms of absorbing that 70% of the population, Glen Eira is carrying far more than its weight relative to other suburbs nearby. So if you actually look at the building permits, if you look at the housing permits, if you look at the multi-dwelling permits, the numbers are actually much higher for Glen Eira than other areas. And part of that is because we don't actually have appropriate planning in place to make sure that it is fairly distributed across the other suburbs. So because there's not many protections in Glen Eira, developers are coming here and pushing it for the most that they can get for the most profits, not necessarily for the betterment of the neighbourhood.
Right. Ethan, Sam?
Simone's exactly right. I think your question about, what is and isn't state government also goes back to that earlier point that we need a council that works, that pushes state government, but also works very collaboratively with state government and has a really strong relationship with members of government and opposition and whatnot. Because, again, there are far too many crossovers in what isn't council's power. And as much as that is a problem, and I would like to see a lot of that given back to council, for now that's for the state to decide. And because of that, you need a council that is very well connected and very well committed to tackling those issues among state politicians.
Sam, anything further to
I agree with both statements, and be nice to work together with both candidates. I think that this business about working with state government is a very important factor, and maybe the council should look at revisiting the sustainable growth policy much more quickly as part of their future planning, and we take control of that much more within our municipality.
Ladies and gentlemen, I warned you at the start that this would be quite a sedate interview. As I said, come on tomorrow, and I'm not sure. We've got a couple of other candidates on at the moment, but I'm not sure that it'll be as sedate tomorrow. But moving on to planning, development, I'd like to address the issue of affordable housing. As most of you know, I've got 3 children, Tula, Sula and Paula. They'd all like to live somewhere near me. I'd like to live near my mother and so on, and it would be lovely to have everyone together, but clearly housing is not affordable. You're probably aware that in our city of Glen Eira, 141,000 people, we have, for example, in Caulfield, the median buy price is 1.78 million. I'm sorry, this might be old because this data was from yesterday. It may have changed today. Rent is 745 per week. There you go, Ethan got it. Caulfield North, over 2 million, almost 2.1 million median buy price, 700 per week. I can go through every one of the suburbs in our municipality. You're getting the idea. Some, by the way, of course, are cheaper. But the fact is, Simone, that it's not affordable, and it's the developers who actually create the supply. Now, we know from the city of Melbourne that when supply exceeds demand, as it has, by the way, for apartments in the last couple of years, clearly it's a renter's market because they're paying a lot less. If we increase the number of units that we have, flats, houses, whatever they are, living places, which might mean we go up some levels, but it certainly means that my kids can live near me affordably. Simone?
I'd like to actually just start off by saying my children still live with me, and I'm assuming they will live with me for a bit longer because of factors like that. I think there are a couple of things we need to bear in mind there when we're talking about developers. Have you actually gone and looked at the prices for a lot of these apartments? Because what I'm seeing is luxury apartments that are not affordable.
Simone, that's correct. And that's why I say we need to increase the supply, as they've done maybe to the detriment of developers in the city of Melbourne, but increase the supply, and suddenly the suppliers then have to lower their expectations, Simone.
So, but that's actually not what's happening. It's nice in theory, but there's still a lot of demand in this area. It is a great area to live. So when you actually look at the difference between the apartments that are in buildings of 5 stories versus 10, they're still predominantly very expensive. And I will say the price you quoted was for standalone houses, not for units and flats. In terms of median, the median is quite a bit lower. But Glen Eira, this area has always been an expensive area. And if you really want substantial changes in affordable housing, as opposed to social housing, then you're really looking at federal level decisions that have driven, you know, the increased demand and hence price. So I don't think we can build our way to lower prices for the general person. And when we talk about affordable social housing, there are very strict conditions about who that's eligible for. And it's unlikely that many of our children will be eligible for that discounted housing anyway. So we're actually looking at what the prices are for the whole stock in the area. And so go and look at some of the new developments, and unless you're moving to Caulfield Village or something like that, apartments all around me, around the Shules, around North Caulfield, they're all well over $1 million, $1.5. So we're not talking cheap anyway.
Yep. Got it.
Yeah.
Sam or Ethan?
That's certainly the case. And then we need to balance our type of living with what we want for the whole community. So there's got to be a lot of work done on how we can achieve that sort of balance price-wise, because you're not, whatever, let's assume we did some cheap housing. Are we really going to please all the community? Is that what we really want? We need to really have a good balance and speak through council and developers how we can achieve that.
Yes, Sam, I suspect my kids might be prepared to compromise on their living standard a bit to live near me rather than move out to Frankston or Wallen or Doreen. Ethan?
It's a fantastic point that isn't addressed nearly enough. The discussions around developments are always from the perspective of those who already live in the area, who are already very comfortable in the area. And, you know, I'm going to have to, you know, get a job that pays a lot better than councillor if I want to move out of home anytime soon. And, you know, I think it's unfortunate that the discussion around it from council for a long time, and Simone, this isn't anything at you, it has been that whole, you know, it's an expensive area, it's always been an expensive area, as if it's not something that we should look at changing. And yes, it is something that's more covered under the federal government that deals with that. But again, just as much as we should be a strong voice to the state government on planning, we can't be a soft and weak voice about affordable housing, because young people want to stay close to their families and they want to stay in Glenara. Who wouldn't want to? But you know, it has to be something that we take as a priority, because far too many young people are outpriced just massively in the area. And again, you know, none of us want to move down to Frankston, you know, when we have to move out. Or worse, Frankston itself is getting more expensive now. I don't know where any of us are going to live, but it has to be taken as a priority just as much as sustainable development and planning is.
And now I'll move on, if I may. Sorry,
yeah, I just want to add one thing here, and I haven't gone through this with my kids yet, but fundamentally when I moved out and grew up and you know, earned my income, I had to make a decision about how much I could afford and where I would live. And so we made the decision to live with far less and live in this area, as opposed to having exactly what we wanted to live in. And when I say far less, the place we first moved into, the stumps had broken, the floors were on the ground. I mean, significantly far less, and we fixed it up over time. So there's a base issue of the fact that the property prices are expensive here, but there's also, I don't think it's realistic for, you know, kids to move out from their, you know, adult parents' home who've been working for 20 or 30 years and to move into a 4 or 5 bedroom home. That's a progression that people start. I started in a little 2-bedroom apartment and worked my way up and decided at what point, we have quite a humble home other than our library, that, you know, what was important to me. And to me, it was being walking distance to my community, to my family. And I didn't grow up in North Caulfield. I grew up in the southern part of Glenira. But these are also about people being prepared to make decisions about what they can do. And no matter what, it's hard. A property is one of the biggest purchases a person will ever make. And I didn't have. But unless you have family members tossing in hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's a hard road. No matter what with the affordable housing, it's still gonna be people's biggest commitment if they are able to purchase.
Now, moving on, if I may, and you've all made some excellent points. So on the issue of bike path, ladies and gentlemen, I think you've seen where we stand on the issue of development planning. I think everyone's about the same. And I've still got someone writing to me saying, why is VCAT overriding things, and because it's largely a state issue. But I'd like to then move on to another area, and that is the open space. Hands up, candidates, if you're keen on seeing more open space. I think about 2 out of the 3 of you, I think, made reference to 3 of you. Oh, well, there you go. So, ladies and gentlemen, you won't be able to discern between them, but perhaps I can pick on someone now. Sam, open space, great idea. But you and I have just finished the discussion about we need more housing accommodation because we want to make sure that it's affordable and have our kids live well. Where's this open space? Is it taking over our roads, or where is it coming from?
Well, that's something we would need to look into carefully. I understand there could be a bit of a fund at council that they've taken some monies from developers when they actually applied for permits, and some of that money perhaps could be redirected towards open space. To me, open space is really, really important. In our municipality and in the Camden ward, I believe it's the second lowest open space in all city councils. So we really need to look at it. It's very important for the well-being of the kids. You can tell even by COVID now how sad it's been that the kids haven't been able to go to school and they're stuck at home. Having open space that really gives them a chance to have some sort of interaction and get outdoors. And even for the middle-aged and the older people, as well as kids, open space is really important. And that's where it comes into account, where we need to have a lot more green coverage as well.
Right,
so,
Sam, back to my question, where is it coming from?
Where is it coming from?
I don't know, I asked you first.
Well, as I said, I believe there's some sort of fund at council, and maybe we can work out some other way of doing it. I really have to research a lot more to give you a straight
Simone,
answer.
you're very passionate about open space. Where's it coming from?
Look, and I think as we're busy putting all these people in the apartments that you think are really important to solving our affordability, they don't have open space. They don't necessarily have very big balconies, and COVID has shown us that open space is incredibly important for people's health and well-being. I will actually correct Sam, we're actually the lowest open space in the state. And as far as I'm aware, Camden has the lowest open space in Glen Eira. So it's kind of like a double whammy.
And ladies and gentlemen, I checked that up beforehand. I believe that could be correct.
Yeah, so let me say there are some really practical things. Council does, developers pay an open space levy towards council. At the moment, there's $26 million sitting in the open space levy account. And I think there's a couple of, just starting to think straight away, and obviously there'd been more research to put together the sort of strategy, but there's probably 2 or 3 main ways that we can create that open space. One is the council needs to strategically look at different areas and work out what properties to actually acquire and put public acquisition overlays on. I think a fair way would do that would be to say either when you're ready to sell, we will buy at market price, or it might be, you know, we'd like to buy in 2 years, but we'll give you market price plus 10% so that you don't lose out to people where it's identified. Another thing is council has public land, and it will be expensive to do this, but could be used to create open space. So for instance, all of those big car parks next to libraries, behind shopping strips, they potentially could have underground car parking, and then the whole area could be converted into a garden. So there's a beautiful one at Melbourne University where the pillars are actually these curved things. So the roots from large trees can actually still grow. You still get permeability, so it's not damaging the water table. So there are some really practical ways that $26 million could be used to create more open space. It will take time. And I think we have to realize that all these things will take time, but if we don't identify what should go where based on population, based on need, people shouldn't have to walk more than 400 metres to a park. They don't all have to be as large as Caulfield Park. It'll be a mixture of pocket parks, sporting facilities, you know, just picnic areas where people can just sit under trees, so a lot more nature, but being really strategic about where that goes. And really important that open space levy doesn't get spent on gold plating our existing parks. We actually need more open space.
And Ethan's giving you the thumbs up, pretty much going like this non-stop. I don't know if it means he's nodding
We're
off.
very agreeable.
You agree, Ethan? Any more?
No, look, I absolutely do agree. If I had to add something, and this isn't green space, but it's definitely shared space. I think we need to look at how we use the space that we already have and how we use the places that we have. There are ideas like temporary urbanism, which is this idea that, or temporary spaces, where, you know, for vacant property and empty property, that council and government can come in and use it to create shared community spaces. And it's ideas that have been trialled across the world and that work brilliantly. And that's things that are created like art facilities or music facilities, or even, you know, community gardens and those sorts of things. That may not be, you know, again, a call for the park, but it's still, we need to be using our space better. We actually do have it. We're just not using it very well. But yeah, Simone is absolutely right.
Anyone for rooftop gardens? I see that happening around the world.
I'm
Love a
happy
rooftop
to
garden.
talk on that. And I think there are, when it comes to our building, we can actually have much greener structures. And I don't just mean the actual building materials, but there are some beautiful in Europe and even in Sydney, some buildings that actually have a lot of greenery growing up the sides, which cools the buildings in summer. Rooftop gardens, obviously you want to think about whether you want to use some of that space for a garden versus photovoltaics or solar arrays generating electricity. So the space on top is a bit, but rooftop gardens, just a great way to be in greenery for someone who lives in an apartment block.
Moving on, we're going to run out of time. Sorry, Sam.
Just to reconfirm, I agree with the better utilisation of existing space. And we're also talking about Caulfield Racecourse being available and used down the track as well.
There you go. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it live today. They pretty much agree on almost everything. Let me just, Sam, transparency in government. In fact, I was looking at your brochure. You used the word independent 3 or 4 times. In fact, I couldn't see much on policy, but it kept on talking about independent and transparency in government. An example of why we need to be transparent. Is there an particular issue, Sam?
I think everything needs to be transparent, particularly on the expenditure at council level. We generate well over $80,000 worth of wages, apparently, and 80 million, I should say.
That would be closer to the mark, yes.
Sorry, 80 million, and we get in about 120 million. So we need to look at seeing where our expenses are going and the transparency of expenditure.
Okay.
And then obviously, and everything else that's going on in council, and I'm new to all this, so I have to do more research, but we do need to see where everything is spent and where we can save and where we can prioritise the important things that the people want today in COVID times to help the community get back on track and spend it in the right areas of priorities at the moment.
Fair enough. Just looking through your brochures again, anyone got issues with the rates at the moment?
I've had a lot of people calling, complaining. Obviously, when some people's rates go up, other people's rates do go down. But, you know, people are getting rate rises at the moment, even though they may be unemployed, of, you know, 10% or more. And part of the issue is that the way the rates is calculated is completely decoupled from our income. And it's also relatively decoupled from the value of our property. So if my property goes down, but your property goes down more, my rates will go up and your rates will go down because it's relative to the value of the properties. And I know there have been discussions about how rates are calculated and how to make them fairer. But I think, you know, we knew about COVID in February, and then it, you know, everything came to a standstill in March. Other councils have actually done things, either they froze rates or they've offered discounts. In Glen Ira, we've actually been reducing the rebates for people in need, such as pensioners, over the years. So they're getting, the rates are going up and up and up, but the support they're getting is less and less and less.
Simone, would it be true to say that our rates actually went up 2%, which was about the lowest in municipal Melbourne?
So the 2% is actually a cap.
Yep.
So that's a cap for the whole municipality. But people living in Camden Ward probably found that their property values went up more than perhaps people in other parts of Glen Ira, which means our rates have gone up more and other people's rates may have stayed the same or dropped. I mean, I know personally I had a 10% increase. There's no way, based on the property price they've cited on my rates report, that I would get that if I tried to sell now. So there's a difficulty in properties being valued in January, and the rates are related to the weighted average of your property price, and then, you know, prices flattening, people's income being hit really hard. So decisions being made about rates in June, and then getting our rates.
Simone, you've got a bit of a finance background. Have you costed this out? You'd like to use some of the money to create open space. You've got a lot of other expenses. Are you proposing that we could make this all work?
Oh, look, there's no doubt. I've worked with budgets for much bigger entities than Glen Ira. I mean, it's only 200 million a year only of our hard-earned money. But it comes down to decisions about what you're going to prioritise and what you might either delay or decide not to do based on, you know, there might be some things that were started based on projections and those projections are actually no longer valid. So that will come down to when those who are elected as councillors get access to more information, much deeper information, they can be involved. And I know the current councillors actually set only a shorter budget, 6 months, not 12, because they knew that new councillors wouldn't be come in and want to be involved with those decisions.
Okay. Last question, Sam.
Can I just say this, that I cannot believe that in a year of COVID, with everyone suffering, businesses as well as the residents, that they actually put rates up. I think that was a really stupid and how do I put it? Unsympathetic message that they've given back to us.
So noted, and please thank Ruth for giving you some tips there. Sam, last question.
I told you, what could I do without her?
Yeah, if she leaves the room, I was going to ask you, what's your most influential character? Person who's most influenced you?
You just said it, Ruth.
I knew if she was out of the room, would it be the same answer? Ethan, your favourite cartoon character?
What a question.
Yes.
I was going to say, are you asking all candidates that question?
No, I'll ask you each one a different question.
I don't know if I have a favourite cartoon character, to be honest.
Okay, favourite book?
I thought you were going to ask me my favourite. I was asked on radio yesterday who my most influential political figure is.
Well, I'll accept that one. Go on.
Yeah, thank you. And what I said yesterday was Don Chip.
Ah, yes. Don Chip. Okay, great. Simone, your favourite Jewish studies and science teacher?
Oh, that's such an easy one. It was Mr. Figdor back then, but Ronnie Figdor, I still remember all of the lessons. And
Right, by the way, that's a great answer, by the way. It's not truthful, but it's a great answer. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've pretty much done our...
Can I just ask if I could just make an announcement for 1 minute?
Yes, as long as it's not political.
It's not political.
Yes, go on.
It's actually, I've started a campaign via Hatzola for our very good dear friend, Dr. Jack Stiglitz, who passed away suddenly a couple of weeks ago. And this campaign is to raise money for a LED 12-volt fibrillator. So if anybody knows Jack or is prepared to look at contributing, it's on the Hatzola website. He was a great man and he was a very kind and first responder at Hatzola and a board member.
Thank you very much. That was a community service announcement, not a political announcement. Thank you very much. So proudly spoken by Sam Parason. Before we wrap up, just tell you a few things. Firstly, thank you very much to the candidates who joined us today, including those who are watching. You think you've got a heads up for tomorrow. It might be different questions. Stay tuned. But thank you very much, Sam, Simone, and Ethan, for joining us today and sharing your views on what it'll be like in the coming months as we put down your names over the next week or so, I think, and put that ballot in the box. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
It was a great conversation.
Thank you. Can I also say that tomorrow we continue with 4 other candidates at 11 o'clock. The Thursday lunch club is otherwise weekly instead of this week. Next week it'll be back to once a week. It'll be on the Thursday at 11 o'clock. Next week, by the way, I'll be interviewing David and Miriam Klein. He barely survived COVID in the Alfred for 6 weeks or more, put on a ventilator and then an ECMO machine, but he's come back to tell us his story. In fact, they'll share with all of us their experience. That's next week. Same channel, by the way, so same Zoom ID, 11 o'clock next Thursday. We have a Yad Vashem masterclass starting tomorrow night. There are a few hundred people who have already signed up. I think we have capacity for 500, so we've got a few places left. That's a Yad Vashem masterclass. If you're not sure, and perhaps I will, no, I've set this up correctly with the chat. If you want to know more about what St Kilda Shule is doing or about the masterclass, type in your address now into the chat. By the way, at the moment, I'm the only one who can receive the chat, so you're not sharing your address with anyone else. So if you want to get on our newsletter list, the newsletter goes out each Thursday morning. So you'll find out about the masterclass, but you will need to register. It's being run live by Yad Vashem in real time each Thursday at 8 o'clock. Obviously, they'll be changing the time they run it because they're stopping daylight savings next week or so. So they'll change the time, but for us, it'll be 8 o'clock every Thursday night. And we've got people from right around the country, in fact, who have signed up already. I'll also tell you that Simone will get a kick out of this. In 2 weeks' time, our Thursday lunch club is, in fact, back to Shepparton. And the reason why, there we go, why I mentioned Simone, because it's her favourite mother. I think it's the only mother she's got. But certainly the favourite one, who will be, I'll be interviewing. She grew up in Shepparton until the age of 17. It'll be fascinating. I also should tell you we've got in St Kilda Shule coming up a celebrity trivia night, celebrities like myself, but some real celebrities as well. And that's coming up on the 8th of November. And also we're going to be interviewing live Adam Schwab, who many of you know runs the Luxury Escapes. That interview will be conducted, in fact, by one of our internal travel agents, that's cousin Brett Kay, who's a travel agent. He'll be speaking to Adam. It'll be mainly for the younger age group. So Sam and you yourself and the younger, I suspect you'll be 21 or something like that. So looking forward to seeing you all. If you'd like to be added to the newsletter list, type in your email address and name into the chat now, and I'll try to add you before tomorrow morning's newsletter. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much to the candidates, and thank you for all those who've come along to watch this. It is being recorded. I should have warned you, candidates, in advance. Whatever you say may be used against you in a court of law, and it'll be uploaded a bit later on to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/StKildaShule12. Thank you very, very much. All the very best. May all your news be good news. I appreciate you all coming today. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rabbi Figdor,
Yes.
you've stopped recording.
I will do that right this instant.